The government, for its part, did not allow any negative portrayals of anything in the war. They kept everything pretty positive. There's an exception or two, but we're just going to generalize. They tried to get people to enlist using nationalism, a sense of pride, also even guilt, like you're not a real man unless you go out and fight in the war. They demonized the enemy, like I said before, portraying the Germans as straight up being animals. And they get people to buy war bonds if you're not actually in the war. And war bonds would be a way of saying like, hey, you can't fight maybe, but maybe you can give your money to the government, loan it to us. We'll give you a very modest return on that investment, and we can use it for the fight. So it's a way of loaning money to the government for the average, average citizen. Here is a picture of I want you for the army. Your country needs you. Does it look familiar? Yeah, it might, because we sort of ripped it off for Uncle Sam. Another British one. Daddy, what did you do in the Great War? Oh, look at that. Look at this coward right here. He didn't fight. You can see it. Look at that guilty look on that guy's face. So it's saying you're going to be shamed by your children if you don't go fight. America steps in, and of course, America being America, they're like, hey, what if we put a babe in a uniform? And some students have been like, I can't tell, it's a girl. That's a girl. Okay, that's a pretty lady. Look at her hair. It's all tucked under her little hat. I want you for the Navy. And the people are like, oh, I want you. Okay, baby. And they're young men. They're just like, okay, I would like to, get to know you too. She's not in the Navy, you silly goose. In France, what's happening? Oh, well, you're a woman. Husband's off fighting. Sons are off fighting. You know what you can do? You can be working in the factory. So they kind of reverse their sexism that they'd established and say, hey, ladies, you should go out and work in the factory while your man's off fighting. Another famous one, this is the United States. You've got this woman that is being terrorized by what appears to be a giant gorilla. Students always are like, oh, King Kong. King Kong is 1933, bros. This is before 1933, perhaps an inspiration, I don't know. You can also tell he's German because he got the little hat. And on here it says culture with this bloody club. Culture is not really that cultured, obviously, because they're brutes. You better stop them, because look, they're coming onto the shores of America. You don't want that, do you? Now, in real life, the Germans have no intent in World War I of invading America. But fear is a powerful motivator. And plus, there's a babe. So young men are like, I'm going to fight and protect our babes, dudes. And they're going to go off and fight. Here's another war bonds one. Till we meet again, buy war bonds. Hey, you can't be with me? That's cool, bros. Maybe you could support me with some money. Give war bonds to your government. During the war, they ration food and resources, including gasoline. They make it so you can't have all you want. You get a share, and you have a little card. You see, it's our gasoline ration card. They control industry and outlaw strikes. For the most part, organized labor is very supportive of the war effort, especially at the beginning. As the war wears on, what about women? Well, women filled factory jobs, as we already talked about, and that's not just France. We're also talking about Britain, America, etc. Some became spies. This is the famous Mata Hari, who was known for using her feminine wiles to get to know the people on the other side and then report back information to the Germans. Even ambulance drivers. That's right there is a woman that has either cut her hair short or tucked it up under her hat, and she's an ambulance driver. Meanwhile, what about the Eastern Front? Russia whoops them. Or I'm sorry, Germany whoops Russia. There's not much to that one. Russia is like, whoa, number one, we're ready a lot faster than you thought, Germany. And then they attack and still lose. The Russians do not have enough ammunition. They do not have enough guns. They got lots of people. But they're not ready for this war. And in fact, the Germans are going to smash them, destroy them, get rid of them. The Russians will also be distracted by the fact that in 1917, the Russian Revolution is going to happen, and the new government of Russia will cause Russia to surrender, and they will lose a quarter of their land. Of course, the new leader is Vladimir Lenin. More on that later. Like, really, I talk about it in a different chapter. All right, why does the United States get involved in the war? Well, Germany had been using submarine warfare. And because German is such a strange but very direct language, they don't call them submarines. They call them undersea boats. Unterseeboats. And everybody nicknames that U-boats because it's easier to say. Well, they've been using this U-boat warfare pretty successfully to try to slow down the British resupplying of France and their own troops. Well, Germany sinks a passenger ship in 1915, and you don't do that. It's just bad form. You don't sink passenger ships. And the United States had people on that ship. And the Germans are all like, you guys were smuggling arms. You were smuggling weapons. And the United States and Britain are like, what? That was a British ship, bro? You're accusing us of what? Okay, in real life, historians know we absolutely were doing that. We absolutely were contributing to this. We were smuggling weapons. But at the time, we got Germany to promise to stop using submarine warfare for a couple of years. They promised to stop it until the end of the war. Well, here's your front page thing. Lusitania sunk by a submarine, about 1,300 dead, and some of them are Americans, and oh my God. Well, they left out, you notice they left out that whole violating international law by smuggling weapons on a passenger ship, but that's okay. Well, Germany resumed submarine warfare in 1917 because they're losing, and they know they're losing. So they say, we need to distract America because America might declare war on us. So they call up Mexico, and they're all like, Mexico, we want you to get involved in the war. Mexico, you might not realize this because it's been a while maybe since you studied it. You'll study it more in your junior year, in California at least. But you have a lot of animosity between Mexico and the United States back in the late 1800s. Mexico lost a lot of land, including California, Texas, etc. New Mexico, huh? So Germany sends this message to Mexico, but it gets intercepted by the British. And the British are all like, huh? Look what we got. And they take it to America. And America's all like, what's this? British are like, we call it the Zimmerman telegram because it's from Arthur Zimmerman, who is the foreign secretary of Germany. And America reads it. They decode it and they read it and they're like, Mexico, what's the deal here? Mexico's like, no say, we never even got it. We don't have any problem with you guys. So America's like, Germany, did you just try to get Mexico to declare war on us? And also, did you start using submarines after you promised you wouldn't? And Germany's all like, uh-oh. Here's the telegram. It exists. So we start sending our troops from America over to the Western Front. Despite the fact that Russia is out of the war, it still overwhelms these guys who have been fighting for so long. The Germans, the generals know there's no hope. There's a socialist revolt in Germany where Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicates, ends up going off to, I think it's Belgium eventually he ends up. And he's like a woodcutter there. He just chills out like having a pastoral life. Austria-Hungary as a country collapses. A new government is formed within Germany that is not a socialist government. That is crushed. The socialist revolt is crushed, but it is a kind of moderate government called the Weimar Republic. Again, more on this in a future chapter, the next lecture probably. And they sign an armistice. They do it on November 11th, 1918, which is 11/11, by the way. And they even do it at 11 a.m. because once you got a theme, you got to stick with it. And this is celebrated as Armistice Day, a holiday to celebrate the end of the war. Nowadays, we call it Veterans Day because there have been more wars since then, and we're honoring veterans of all wars. So let's talk about how many people were killed in World War I. Well, Germany, 2 million, Russia, 1.7. You can read this yourself, but obviously the Germans and the Russians took the worst of it, whereas the Americans, who came into the war rather late, took a very small amount. Also, at the same time, in 1918, during this terrible war, there was also the worst flu epidemic in history, the so-called Spanish influenza, that people, back then they used to estimate 20 million people died. Historians have started saying, like, well, maybe it's as high as 100 million. And it spread very quickly because a lot of people were injured, a lot of people were in close proximity, they were eating diets that were not as strong, and this particular influenza was especially nasty that year. So, what about the treaty? Well, there is a Treaty of Versailles, and the Treaty of Versailles ends the war. Okay, there's more to it than that, but that's what I'm going with for this survey class. And 4 major groups are involved. There is a delegation from Britain, Italy, France, and the United States. Remember how I said Italy changes sides? Well, Italy changes sides. So Britain has got this guy named David Lloyd George. He is their prime minister. He says, look, I want revenge on Germany as much as the other guys, but we need to have a stable Germany. We don't want this to happen again. Italy's like, you know, forget all that, guys. I got into this war to get territory. You made a secret treaty with me that I would get a whole bunch more territory. Where's my territory? Am I getting it from Austria? France is all like, we want revenge. We want to make Germany suffer. And America, whose president is a guy named Woodrow Wilson, says, look, what we need here is a peace without victory. And everybody's like, what? What are you talking about, Woodrow Wilson? That doesn't make sense. He's like, no. Obviously, we won. The Allies here won. We beat the Central Powers. We beat Germany and Austria and their allies. But we need to make it so Germany is not so humiliated and defeated that they want revenge on us. And Britain's all like, you know, pip, pip, we agree, governor. And France is all like, no, revenge. And Britain's like, well, that's a good point too, governor. We also want revenge. So they try to hammer through this thing. The United States tries very hard. They say, look, why did this happen? Because of nationalism, right? Was it Serbia upset about nationalism? Didn't they want to be left alone by Austria, have their own nation? We need to let these nations that are under the control of other nations be their own people. So like Austria-Hungary, let's break it up and make it into a bunch of different brand new countries. And people are like, okay, keep talking, bro. You know what else? We also need to have representatives from all the nations in the world to meet and discuss our problems. You might be like, oh, United Nations? This is the precursor to the United Nations. This is what if the United Nations was even less effective. Whatever you think about the UN, they do get some things done, but they don't solve all our problems today. League of Nations, less effective than that. So that should tell you something. Here are our major representatives. Here's Woodrow Wilson here. Here is the French representative, Georges Clemenceau, who looks like a walrus in my opinion, right here. Here is David Lloyd George, and here is Vittorio Orlando from Italy. So there they are. So what's Europe going to look like now? Well, Russia, Austria, Hungary, and Ottoman Empire all lose land. It creates some new countries, including Poland and Yugoslavia. Germany is going to be punished. They are going to lose territory, both in Europe and also overseas. And they didn't even have that many colonies, remember? And their army is going to be severely limited. They'll be limited down to 100,000 men. To give you a sense of that, Fresno has almost 500,000 residents. So Germany would not be able to invade Fresno successfully. They are not allowed to have any troops on the border with France, which is a national humiliation. And they also have to pay $32 billion in reparations to France and France and Britain. People are like, wait, what? What? 32 billion? Billion? And Germany's all like, are you serious? And they're like, oh yeah, we're serious. This is meant to put the hurt on Germany, and it's successful. Finally, Germany accepts full blame for the war in the infamous Article 231 of the Treaty of Versailles. And this is controversial, largely because, in my estimation, Germany, I mean, William II is an idiot, sure, but he's not fully responsible for the war. I mean, guys you know, maybe I would put probably Austria #1, maybe Russia #2, maybe then Germany, then Serbia probably. That would be my ranking personally. But no one asked me. I wasn't born yet. There's Article 231. It exists. Whoa. This is Germany now. Big thing about Germany is that this part of Germany is taken away and given to Poland so that Poland will have access to the water. So Germany is like separated. You got Germany, 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 Poland, Germany. Wait, what? Yes. There's Germany, and then there's East Prussia, which is still part of Germany. This is the stuff on the border with France and Belgium, where they're not allowed to keep any troops. And here Alsace-Lorraine, which the French wanted back so bad, they got Alsace and Lorraine back in France. Also, to add insult to injury, the biggest industrial district in Germany goes to France for 15 years, which hurts Germany economically, and Germany promises to never unite with Austria again. Okay. Here's some of your new states here. You got new state Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, East Prussia, which we just talked about, which is part of Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Austria is now just Austria. Notice how much smaller they are. And all the Slavic nations are united under the name Yugoslavia. So basically, it's mostly chunked out of, it's mostly Austria, but a little bit of Germany and a little bit of what used to be Russia. Remember, Russia lost the war and gave their territory to Germany. So then when they did this peace treaty, they gave some of that former Russian territory that had gone to Germany, they made that stuff free. Some people are going to be bitter about this. Like, for example, did you notice I didn't mention anything about Italy getting a whole bunch of territory? They didn't. So the Italians are going to think of this as being like, we got cheated by the Treaty of Versailles. Some Germans are going to be like, we have been humiliated. We need to get back. We need to make Germany great again. All right, now let's real quick go into the Russian Revolution. I know you're tired. Heck, I'm a little tired too. This one's a pretty quick one. So in 1917, there's a Russian Revolution. But in order to talk about that, we got to talk about Tsar Nicholas II. Now, Tsar Nicholas II had 4 daughters, all lovely daughters. He's got Anastasia as the youngest one, Tatiana, Maria, and Olga. Actually, that wasn't the correct order. It goes Olga, Tatiana, Maria, Anastasia. And then finally he got a little boy with his wife Alexandra, who was a German princess, and I also married a German princess, so I don't blame him. And problem. Remember how I said in a different lecture everybody's related to everybody else in these royal families in the 19th century? Well, and that's right, we're going back to the late 1800s, the late 19th century. Well, hemophilia is something that is spread by relation of people with Queen Victoria. And Alexandra is a carrier of it, and she gives it to her son. And her son has this hemophilia disease. Basically, it means you don't clot. You bleed and bleed, but you don't stop bleeding. Well, along comes this weirdo named Gregori Rasputin. Father Gregory is what he calls himself. Rasputin is what most other people call him, because Rasputin means the degenerate one. And he is a faith healer, and he says, I can heal your son. And everybody's like, nah, you can't do that. And he's all like, I can. So he puts his hands on the boy. When he's having a bout of hemophilia, everybody thinks that the kid is going to die. And guess what he says? He says, just hang on. We're going home. Footnote, the custodian just walked in. I was sitting here wearing a Drake mask, talking to myself loudly. So that's a thing I'll have to explain later. Anyway, so here's Alexandra and baby Alexis, and there he is there. Now, they kept it a big national secret that Alexis was hemophiliac. But sure enough, Rasputin had been effective. Either he had, some people think he maybe hypnotized him, some people think it was just a coincidence, whatever. What we do know is Rasputin was kept around because they thought, you know, as long as Rasputin's around, kid can't get sick. And here he is. You could see why he was such a popular guy. See, Rasputin's a crazy cat because he is a priest, a Tsarist monk that walks across Russia on his feet, right? He's not taking anything else. He walks. And Russia's big. And he's got this belief system that's like, you know what, in order to know sin, it brings you closer to God, because God abhors sin. He hates it. So you got to sin a lot to be closer to God. And he believes that God has rewarded him with these faith healing powers. So he goes around Russia and he is sinning. Let me tell you, he is interested in getting to know people, if you know what I mean, and I think you do. He drinks quite a bit. Especially after he's stabbed by a former girlfriend/prostitute, and she tries to murder him and fails. Her words as she does it are like, "I have killed the devil," but she did not kill Father Gregory. And he drinks even more after that because he's like, "Oh, my gut hurts. Better drink more." And now he's living in the royal family's house, this palace, along with the Tsarina, the queen. That's what she's called, the Tsarina. And their 4 daughters. And everybody's like, why is this pervo living with you? What's the deal? And Nicholas can't tell anybody because it's a big secret. So they think Rasputin is manipulating them like puppets. Well, on top of that, here comes World War I. And they are completely unprepared for it. So the Tsar says, I am going to take personal command. Rasputin says, you know what you need to do? You need to go out to the front. And the Tsar is like, I'm going to do it, Rasputin, okay? Because you are a holy man and you speak with God, even though you are a straight-up pervo that is always doing things and you're a drunkard. So now Rasputin is left alone in St. Petersburg, the capital, with the Tsarina and their daughters. Not good. Well, Rasputin is invited to a dinner party by other members of the Romanov family. And he is told there's going to be drinking and drugs, and he's like, I am totally down with that. And when I say the Romanov family, we're talking about like cousins now of the Romanovs, specifically the Grand Duke Dmitry and Felix Yusupov. And they invite him over, and he's eating his little, you know, whatever, wheat cakes or whatever, and he's drinking, getting crunk or whatever you kids say, and suddenly collapses. And Yusupov is all like, aw, yeah, we just killed Rasputin. And he goes in the other room, comes back in. Rasputin ain't there anymore. Rasputin left. He's like, how did Rasputin leave? Now, this is December 1916. Rasputin has straight up opened the door and started going. So Yusupov is all like, oh, yeah? Oh, yeah? He's got a problem solver. You know what its name is? Revolver. And so he says, hey, Rasputin, guess what? And Rasputin turns around, sees him, and charges him. Because Rasputin is a straight-up G, keeping it 100. And he runs at him, and Felix is like, pow, 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 pow. Shoots him. At least 3 times. Sometimes people say 5 times. Keep in mind, Yusupov had also been drinking and also doing drugs, so maybe his aim wasn't great. But Rasputin, all right, cool. This guy's dead now. So Dmitry and Yusupov, they go get some chains. And I don't mean like 2 chains. I mean like big old, like imagine your bike locks. And now imagine like what if they're like for ships, okay? They're huge. So he's going to come out. He's like, that fool's still moving. They're like, oh, he's not going to be moving no more. Pow! 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 They're hitting him with the chains. Wrap him up in the chains. He ain't moving no more. Throw him in the River Neva. Guess what? The official cause of Rasputin's death? Drowning. On the left there, you can actually go to St. Petersburg, and you can go to the room where Rasputin was poisoned. They actually have little wax figures. I think it's kind of creepy and cute. And this is an autopsy photo of Rasputin. He's dead. So, that same winter, the Tsarina, Alexandra, the queen, is very upset. She's like, oh, God, Rasputin's dead. He was the only thing keeping my child alive. And then somebody's like, mail for you, ma'am. And she's all like, mail? Huh? And it turns out Rasputin had left a will. He had predicted his own death. And in it, it says, I think I'm going to die soon. It was written like 3 weeks prior. And it says, if I am killed by any member of the Romanov family, the Romanov family shall be cursed. And she's all like, oh, snap. Now we're cursed. This is no good. She's not really able to deal with the food shortages that are taking place. There's riots breaking out. The army refuses to put down these riots. Russia falls into chaos. If your army's not with you, that's a really bad sign. Nicholas will abdicate. He will give up the throne on March 15th, 1917. And you might be like, what about his son? His son had hemophilia, which is a big secret, right? The Tsar's like, I'm going to abdicate. And the new government is like, yeah, you're going to need to leave now. And he's like, oh, yeah, that totally makes sense. That totally makes sense. One more thing. I need to abdicate on behalf of my son as well. And they're like, well, we just assumed he would take over. We didn't intend to get rid of all kings forever. And he's all like, no, just for reasons, I'm going to abdicate on behalf of my son. In real life, Nicholas's advisors told him that his son would probably not live very long without his family to kind of see to him and take care of him. So he abdicated on behalf of his son, who would have been the future Alexander IV, but that never happened. Well, the Russian Duma takes over under the leadership of Alexander Kerensky, stays in the war, which is a radically unpopular move. And then there is another revolution that is that same year when Vladimir Lenin and the communists take over, also in 1917. There's Lenin on the right there. Lenin will order the execution of the Tsar and his family. They will all die. I know some of you are like, but I saw Anastasia, and it sounds just like what you were talking about, but Anastasia didn't die. She escaped. Yeah, in real life, the girls sewed in diamonds into their outfits because they were just told they were being moved to a different place. So everybody was like, oh, okay, we're just sewing in diamonds. And so these guys come in, these soldiers come in, they're like, pa, 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 pa. And the guys are like, oh, we're dead. But the girls are like, choo, 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 because the diamonds that they're wearing are reflecting the bullets. So the soldiers move in with the bayonets and they stab them in the faces. I know that that is not as sweet a story as the Anastasia story, that cartoon, but that's what actually happened. So they died. Well, the communists don't get off without a fight. There are people who still support the Tsar. They go to war against the Bolsheviks. That's the name for the communists. Lenin's communist group is called the Bolsheviks. And the Americans support the anti-communists. They become known as the Reds because communism always uses red as a symbol for them. And the Whites, which are the anti-communists. The Reds are under the leadership of Trotsky, Leonid Trotsky, and the Whites are under no particular leadership because there are a lot of different groups trying to fight. The Reds are going to defeat them, and Trotsky will remain victorious. He gets quite a reputation after that, and a lot of young people really start looking up to him and see him as a successor to Lenin. In order to make the economy recover, Lenin will initiate the new economic policy to kind of serve as baby steps from capitalism over to communism. And it kind of works, but not really. Lenin then establishes a dictatorship where he is the leader, which is really not communism. He portrays himself as a common man sweeping away the church, the bureaucrats and bankers, and the kings. He says, in the Soviet Union, this guy is talented, so we will let him play for us. We will have him in the greatest concert halls in all of Russia. In America, government doesn't take care of you. You're going to be on the streets, son. He renames the country the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics and moves the capital from St. Petersburg to the old capital back in Moscow. Remember, prior to Peter the Great, the capital had been in Moscow. All right. Have a nice day. Good night.